Hey everyone, Rho here. Before we begin today, our next week's special is on the way, and I've decided it's going to be dedicated to the enemies of the Imperium. A week where we'll be giving some much needed love to the other factions of the 40k universe. However, as for today we're talking the Deathwatch, how their past experiences within their chapters can affect their service. Spoiler warning to begin, as the events we're discussing today are from the short story Rackinruin by author Braden Campbell. As always, I really recommend you read the stories for yourself first, as that's the best way to enjoy the lore for yourself, without spoilers. But with that said, let's just jump straight in. So the Deathwatch, the branch of the Astartes dedicated to hunting the Xeno threat. Created from the events of the War of the Beast, the Deathwatch is the union of Astartes and Inquisition, its members drawn from across the Space Marine chapters, all under the umbrella of the Ordo Xenos. The lengths of service may vary from short to many centuries, and any Marine who successfully returns to their chapter are undoubtedly changed as individuals. Of course, a brotherhood is formed amongst the Deathwatch kill teams, yet it's also not without its difficulties, as so vast is the range of Astartes chapters that it can really bring to light the different ways of war, different philosophies in thought. And it's how the Marines handle this that I find particularly interesting. And I found there's a particularly good example of that in the short story Rackinruin. Now here, a Deathwatch task force is in pursuit of an Orc vessel that's been causing havoc across the segmentum. Somehow it's achieving speeds the Imperium has struggled to match. And in true Orc nature, it shrugged off any weapons fire the Imperium has managed. Entire fleets have fallen before this thing, as it just continues to bash its way from world to world. But that's where the Deathwatch come in. As the Orc vessel approaches its latest victim, a forge world by the name of Chestirad, the Astartes feel the particular minerals of the forge world's moon will interfere with the Greenskins' vessel's power source, giving them precious time to attempt a boarding. And this is where we get to see how an Astartes background can play into their time within the Deathwatch. The particular team attempting this endeavour is led by a watch captain Jarrell. Beneath him is a marine by the name of Archelaus, a Dark Angel, Lorno from the Ultramarines, and Carbray from a chapter known as the Sentinels. In being only 4, it's safe to assume the campaign against the Orcs has been pretty arduous. However, not being denied, Jarrell plans the boarding assault. And it's clear the philosophies of their parent chapters have a huge influence. We'll hit them just below the bridge. Archelaus righted himself. No, wait, he snapped. Jarrell ground his teeth. Of course, the Dark Angel had some objection. He always did. What is it? He growled. I disagree with your choice, Archelaus said. Carbray shook his head and returned his attention to his weapon. Lorno shifted his weight in strained patience. After a moment, Archelaus added, respectfully. Jarrell's eyes narrowed. I am tired of having conversations like these, he said in a low voice. I am the watch captain, and I give the orders. Archelaus pulled back his hood. I am your second and your technical advisor. It's my duty to present you with the best course of action. And what would you have us do? Archelaus tapped the display for emphasis. The blue and white schematic they had been studying was suddenly replaced by a picked capture of Rackinruin. We board here, aft quarter. It's the shortest route to the primary engine core. We go in through the engine bell. Now, right from the off here, you can feel those chapter rivalries bubbling to the surface. That line of Jarrell grinding his teeth when Archelaus interjects. And note, his fault wasn't Archelaus always has an objection, but the Dark Angel. Whether through learnt experiences together within the Deathwatch, or past experiences with the Dark Angel's chapter, Jarrell is clearly of a very different tactical, as well as emotional mindset to Archelaus. And really, even in gaining this brief insight of Archelaus always objecting to the intended tactic, to me it sounds like he simply typifies his chapter. As their Primarch of old, the Sons of the Lion are renowned for their tactical ability, as well as equally as much their blunt matter-of-factness. To a Dark Angel, the shortest route is the most practical. Disabling the ship is obviously the logical decision to take. It's what his chapter would do. However, Jarrell is no Dark Angel. He too is moulded by his own chapter's nature, and for him, it's the Crimson Fists. Jarrell, after getting over what appears to him to be a crazy notion of going in through the engine, reaffirms his order and intent to Archelaus, to board the enemy below the bridge, to fight their way through, and slay the Orc leader. The events of Rinnsworld are legendary. The almost complete annihilation of the Crimson Fists chapter by, it has to be said, an Orc invasion. Understandably, this has left a hatred of the Greenskins imprinted on the chapter's collective psyche, particularly the firstborn Marines of the chapter, the ones who survived through the invasion, of which Jarrell undoubtedly is, with this being an older story. It's hard to argue you can't see some of that influence in his intent here. One plan to take out the leader and the bridge, the other to simply immobilize the ship. As the argument or debate continues, you can't help but feel those chapter natures rise to the surface. We have only this one chance to stop it. Yes, Archelaus nodded, and my plan will do that. Orcs can't maintain their ships or weaponry without their engineers. Orcs fight less effectively without a commander. Our mission is to discern why Rackinruin can travel the way it does, and then stop it from ransacking more Imperial worlds. We don't need to seek out the Orc leaders in order to do that. A tense silence suddenly filled the briefing chamber. Jarrell's voice was little more than a growl. That almost sounds like cowardice. And there it is, the truth of the emotions behind Jarrell's orders. Archelaus the Dark Angel is thinking only of the black and white of their orders. Investigate the ship and disable it. After that, the Imperium can bring the big guns to bear. He doesn't care about taking a bridge, hacking through Orcs or slaying a commander. In fact, his plan even takes into account their low numbers, as he would reply to the challenge that it sounds like being tactically sound. Yet, with that mention of cowardice from Jarrell, for me the truth of his Crimson Fist heart is revealed. He may be wearing the black of the Deathwatch, but his heart and soul will always be a Crimson Fist, a son of Rogel Dawn. He wants to take the fight to the Orcs. He wants to slay the war boss. In some way, he needs to. The scars of Rinnsworld embedded within him. You can change the armor you wear, but you can never change the heart beneath. The Marines of the Deathwatch's kill teams, while representing the Deathwatch during their service, will always embody their chapters of old. They will always embody their Primarch's lineages. For me, it's a really interesting glimpse into the realities of a Deathwatch kill team. How simply donning the black armour doesn't erase your history. And it's actually quite ironic, as Jarrell, despite clearly influenced by his life as a Crimson Fist, asks Archelaus if that's what the Dark Angels would do, to which he replies absolutely, only for Jarrell to then chide him, "You are not in your home chapter anymore." A watch captain influenced and guided by his true chapter, chastising another for using its teachings, the reality of which is the more logical choice to make. Who was right and who was wrong? Well, I definitely recommend checking out the story as it's a great little read. Only a few pages long, but definitely an enjoyable one. As ever, anything guided by your heart within the brutal grim dark invariably comes back to haunt you. In refusing to listen to the experiences and knowledge of those around him, Watch Captain Jarrell actually removes perhaps the Deathwatch's greatest strength, the combined knowledge and skills of the entire Astartes, which is always what the Deathwatch was supposed to represent. But as always everyone, what do you think? Do you think it's a given that the Astartes of the Deathwatch will be shaped by their past? That it's only human nature for them to be guided by their history? Is it too much to expect them to ignore it? Or given their training, given their vows in entering the Deathwatch, should Jarrell be the wiser man? Like me, do you agree that recruiting Marines from across the galaxy is the Deathwatch's greatest strength? Or perhaps do you disagree and believe it to be its greatest weakness? That perhaps the Deathwatch should recruit its own Marines, rather than incorporating them from across the other chapters? Would this improve the Deathwatch's fighting strength, or perhaps weaken it? As always, leave your thoughts in the comments below, I love to read them. Huge thank you to all my subscribers, your support truly means a lot to me, it really does. If you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. And if you enjoyed this particular vid, then why not drop a like on it too. But with that said, I am off, and I'll see you all again real soon.